Living a safe and healthy life on testosterone replacement is not having a heart attack.
You ain't been doing the education. You don't realize I'm so frustrated. You ain't got the answer. You ain't got the answer.
Hey guys, Fitness Science back at you with another video. Today is going to be about what you should be doing before jumping on testosterone replacement therapy. So here are the four main things I think that you should do before you commit to a lifelong decision of taking testosterone. Number one is blood work, so important. FSH and LH are going to be key in determining where your testosterone levels are at. FSH and LH, the gonadotropins that stimulate the HPT axis, more the testicles, to produce testosterone are going to be key. So we need to know where they're at because that is going to tell us whether you're primary hypogonadism or secondary. Primary is where your testicles are not responding to LH and FSH, and typically you might have elevated levels of gonadotropins but a very low testosterone level because it's essentially your body isn't reacting to the gonadotropins and the body is trying to pump out LH and FSH, but the testicles aren't responding. So there's an issue at the testicles. Typically, this is seen in something like Klinefelter syndrome, where you have two X chromosomes, where if you're a male, you should have an X and a Y, but in Klinefelter's, you actually have two X's and a Y. So you have an extra X chromosome, which as a result is affecting the testicles' production of testosterone. The good news is that primary is a bit easier to diagnose because it has an early age of onset. Typically you'll be diagnosed quite early, either teens or early 20s, if you have this condition. Most people who have primary hypogonadism really have no choice. They have to take testosterone. Secondary hypogonadism may be higher up in the HPT axis, so at the level of the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland, you may have low FSH and LH. Now this is saying that the brain isn't pumping out as much gonadotropins as it should be. So if you have low or borderline low gonadotropins, and maybe like a normal to borderline low testosterone level, it may be secondary. And here, if it's very severe, if the discrepancy is really severe, it may actually be indicative of what the hell? It may be indicative of something like a pituitary tumor. So that should be checked out first before you commit to just taking testosterone without knowing exactly why the blood markers might be out of whack. Other things that affect the brain's production of testosterone, because it all starts in the brain, are things like antidepressants and cannabis. If you're taking these other medications and you have a low testosterone level, it's hard with antidepressants, but at least with cannabis, if you can try and get off weed, you may be able to increase your testosterone. And then of course, all the other markers need to be done before you commit to testosterone. These are things like lipids, a complete blood count, PSA to check the health of the prostate gland, kidneys, liver, thyroid, vital organs, and two key cardiac markers. Now, the heart is going to be the most important thing to look out for on testosterone replacement because certain side effects of testosterone replacement can directly influence blood pressure and the thickness of your blood, and you don't want to be making your heart work harder for decades on end. Two key markers that you should check before you commit testosterone replacement, as well as throughout the entire course of your TRT if you decide to go down that route, are two markers: lipoprotein A, which is an LDL variant and is absolutely key, and the research is really strong that LPA is one of the key drivers behind heart disease and heart attacks, and C-reactive protein, which is another protein heavily involved in keeping your heart healthy and making sure that you don't have a heart attack. Living a safe and healthy life on testosterone replacement is not having a heart attack, and making sure that these two markers are in check are absolutely vital if you want to be safe and healthy whilst taking testosterone replacement. So overall, making sure that your blood is healthy is going to be key on testosterone. I can't stress this enough. We need to make sure that all our markers are in check, because if they're not, you're adding more stress to your body and you don't want to be doing this over many years. Number two, if you get a low or borderline low testosterone level, I know it can be disappointing, but you need to look at your lifestyle factors as well. So diet and sleep, as well as training. A lack of sleep reduces testosterone significantly. So even 3 hours, from 8 hours to 5 hours, can decrease testosterone levels by like 10 to 15%, which is huge. So imagine you get like a borderline average or a little bit below average testosterone level. If you could bump that up 15%, it may make a huge difference. Diet's really important too. If you're going out eating junk food all the time, probably not going to be great for your testosterone levels. And overtraining. So if you've just done like a huge heavy block of training and you go and get your testosterone levels checked the next morning after like 6 weeks of heavy training, there is significant evidence that overtraining drops testosterone levels. So There's a balance here. You don't want to just smash yourself, get a blood test and be like, oh shit, my testosterone's low, because it may not be. And then of course there's nutrition before the blood test. So there's a lot of evidence to show that if you eat before getting a testosterone blood test, it can drop it significantly as compared to if you're fasted. So again, if you've eaten, if you're tired, if you don't sleep very well and your diet's pretty crappy and you've just done like heavy training and you get a blood test, don't be surprised if it's low, because there are significant modifications to your lifestyle factors that you can make to boost your testosterone up. And it may save you from getting on TRT if you don't actually need it. Like, get the low hanging fruit first, I reckon. If you've done everything and it's still low, then we look at TRT. But just jumping on with all the other lifestyle factors out of whack is a bit of a band-aid solution. Number 3 is supplements. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking this is bullshit. Nothing actually works to boost your natural endogenous production of testosterone. But I would argue that there is significant cellular science behind some of these supplements, and it's quite strong on a microscopic level as to how these supplements boost testosterone. I did a video on the top 10 that I personally recommend to boost your testosterone levels about 10 to 15%. And I think this is really strong for the guys who have that borderline average level of testosterone. You get your blood test back and you're not at like clinically hypogonadal levels of like 100 nanograms per deciliter, but say you're at sort of 350, 380, and you're like, it's not great, but it's not super low either. And you're sort of stuck thinking, what do I do in this case? I feel like a lot of guys are just below average and they're like, should I jump on? Should I not? Is it low enough for me to jump on? Some of these supplements may just push you over the edge, and a 10 to 15% boost on a level of like 400 may actually be quite significant in resolving your symptoms. And yes, before you get on TRT, because it's such a lifelong decision, there's no rush in a way. It would be like a good idea to try some of these supplements first. And if they don't work, that's fine. You know, at least you always have TRT as an option later on. If they don't work, that's totally fine. But, you know, it's almost like if you get on TRT, that's sort of it at that point. Yes, you can come off, but you know, it's hard to come off. And you can obviously suppress your HPT axis. So why not, if you have a sort of average functioning HPT axis, try some of the supplements first, because who knows, you may save yourself a world of injections and TRT for the rest of your life. And number 4 is symptoms. Now, I feel like some guys get very caught up with the numbers. They see like 350 nanograms per deciliter and they're like, oh shit, it's so low. But I would say really sit down with yourself and ignore the number. If you get a borderline low testosterone level, ignore the number for a second. Just think, how do I actually feel? Like, are you chronically tired all the time? Are you training really hard but not seeing any muscle mass improvements? Is your libido significantly low? And not just like, oh, I work 18-hour days and I feel tired all the time. Because even on like a gram of test a week, you're gonna feel tired if you do 18-hour days. But are you disproportionately tired when maybe previously in your life you haven't been as tired with the same amount of workload? And strength in the gym, you know, like if you've gone from benching like 2 plates to not even being able to bench 1 plate, despite actually training as hard as you can, this may be an indication that your testosterone levels are out of whack. I don't mean go away for like a year and then you're like, oh, I can't bench 2 plates anymore, because that's just not training. But yeah, have you significantly lost libido, strength, muscle mass? Are you tired all the time despite trying to do all the right things? And then body fat, like have you seen significant changes in your body fat or your body composition despite eating well and sleeping, etc., etc.? These are all signs that your test might be low, and a blood test to confirm that or deny that would be really useful. The overall point, I think, is that a goal for TRT should be symptom resolution. So sit with yourself and define the symptoms that you're feeling. Don't try and like just attribute the symptoms to the number, if that makes sense. Try and ignore the number. I know it's hard if you're disappointed with your number, but try and ignore the number and just think, how are my symptoms actually stacking up if I just didn't even know what the number was? And just getting on TRT for strength gains isn't actually backed by the research. Research has shown that being in the normal ranges doesn't actually confer any additional strength to you. So say you're like, 400 nanograms per deciliter and you go up to like 800, there's no real evidence that that is going to confer a significant strength advantage to you. Yes, there might be a little bit, but if you just get on TRT for the strength and the gym gains alone, I do feel like you're doing it for the wrong reasons, because it should be all about symptom resolution and getting you feeling better. That's the whole goal, isn't it? Like getting you feeling healthy, getting that vitality back and making you feel better. And the only way to do that is to ignore the number and really sit with yourself and define the symptoms. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Just a quick little video about the things I think you should do before committing to TRT, because it's like a lifelong decision, and don't rush into it, because TRT will always be there as an option. But if you can do some things to fix your testosterone levels first and get rid of the symptoms, then isn't that better than sticking your ass with a needle every single week for the rest of your life? I don't know, maybe you might like that. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Fitness Science signing out.